love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Congratulations to GB News Breakfast, voted by you as the nation's best multi-channel news programme at the prestigious Trick Awards.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up today, the NHS, it's his birthday, 75 years old. Tonight, I've got a job for you. I want your 5-point plan. How would you sort out the NHS if you were the Health Secretary? And by the way, did you see that it's had a church service today? There's been prayers and readings. That, if you ask me, is weird. What says you? And do you ever use ticket offices when it comes to travelling on the train? If you do, bad luck, because it seems likely that most of them are going to close. Do we need ticket offices, or are they just a blast from the past and life has moved on? Speaking of life moving on, there's something that really is troubling me. The latest example of it, NatWest Bank, right? Now their staff members have dual kind of lanyards when it comes to their names. One side if the staff feel like a masculine guy one day, and another side if they feel like a feminine woman the next. Oh, honestly, people, I say this often, but I promise you, I feel like this world is going mad. Is it just me, stuck in some kind of dark era, or is all of this quite sinister and wrong? You tell me. And Biden, he has picked his favourite person to lead NATO. And do you know who it is? It might surprise you, or it might not. To hear Ursula von der Leyen is the name in choice. That would be the same Ursula von der Leyen, by the way, that thought that there should be an EU army to do away with NATO. What do you make to it all? Your thoughts, please. Before we get into it, let's bring ourselves up to speed, though, shall we? With the headlines from Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight, King Charles has been presented with the honours of Scotland. At a service of Thanksgiving in Edinburgh, His Majesty received the oldest crown jewels in Britain, a crown, a sceptre and a sword made of gold, silver and precious gems. The day of pomp and pageantry concluding with a fly past by the red arrows emblazoning the skies with red, white and blue. The event seeing several protests, we understand. Police Scotland confirming 2 women were arrested after they allegedly tried to climb over crowd barriers. Now, a record waiting list has cast a shadow over the NHS's 75th anniversary. Political leaders, along with members of the royal family, paid tribute to staff during a ceremony, nevertheless, at Westminster Abbey today. And that's as Labour warned the NHS will die out without further investment and modernisation. 7.4 million people are currently on waiting lists, with the government acknowledging that number could get worse before it gets better. Earlier, the Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeton told GB News the NHS is facing the worst crisis in its history.
I'm deeply angry about the two-tier system we have in our country today, where those who can afford it are paying to go private and those who can't afford it are being left behind. And my answer would be, in the short term, where there is spare capacity in the private sector, we should be paying for it on NHS terms so that people who can't afford it are getting it free at the point of use. That would be my answer. I've got no objection to using private sector capacity to get NHS waiting lists down faster.
The Wimbledon Tennis Championship was disrupted by 2 Just Stop Oil demonstrations this afternoon. One protester was arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass and criminal damage after orange confetti was thrown on Court 18. And that's after 2 other activists were detained for targeting the same court. The group says it took action because of the tournament's sponsorship deal with Barclays Bank, which it says has given £30 billion to oil and gas companies over the last 2 years. Well, earlier, security at Harrods, the department store in London, also removed a group of protesters who entered the luxury store holding placards on an escalator. Video posted on the group's Twitter account shows staff evicting them. Now, the UK has signed a new partnership deal with Poland aimed at increasing foreign policy and defence cooperation. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, and the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, earlier met with the Polish Defence Minister to agree on their priorities, including issues concerning Belarus and China. The new 2030 Strategic Partnership Agreement builds on 2017 UK-Poland Treaty, which provided a framework for improved cooperation between the 2 NATO allies. Mr Wallace praised Poland as well for its ongoing support for Ukraine since the start of the invasion.
Britain and Poland puts its money where its mouth is. It hasn't just condemned Russia with words, it has condemned Russia with its direct support to Ukraine, using Polish airfields to help get into Ukraine the very important equipment that was needed right from the start.
Now, there's anger over plans which would see the closure of almost every railway station ticket office in England. The proposal, unveiled by the Rail Delivery Group, affects hundreds of stations, with facilities only expected to remain open at the busiest stations. Disability charities and unions are among those who voiced their concerns, saying it's going to impact vulnerable people and will lead to job losses. The decision about which offices may close will be made after a consultation process. RMT's General Secretary Mick Lynch doesn't back the new measures.
Now, this is dehumanising the railway, and it's exactly what we've been campaigning against. We were told we were scaremongering, and now it's revealed they are going to close every single ticket office on our network, and that will mean mass de-staffing and a very dehuman railway going forward.
Now, lastly, a jury has been told today that Kevin Spacey grabbed a man like a cobra and made a hardcore comment at a West End theatre. The Hollywood actor was described as smelling of booze when he allegedly grabbed the complainant. The 63-year-old is on trial, accused of sex offences against 4 men between 2001 and 2013. He denies all the charges. And schools across England have been forced to close today or restrict entry to students, with teachers walking off the job in a row over pay. It's their 7th strike this year, and unions have warned there'll be more action in the autumn if a deal can't be reached. As well as lessons, end-of-term events like school trips and sports days are also being disrupted, and members of the National Education Union are due to walk out again on Friday. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. I was listening to that report there. He grabbed a man like a cobra. I dread to think, quite frankly, what that means. The mind boggles, doesn't it, ladies and gents? It really does. I am Michelle Dewberry. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the former Brexit Party MEP and journalist Martin Daubney, and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Good evening to both of you.
Evening.
You know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three here. It's very much about you guys at home. I loved it last night, by the way. The guys at home, you guys, were getting in touch, asking the panel questions. You won't need me at this rate, but I loved it. You can get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at gbnews. I've got a task for you all. I've asked you what is your 5-point plan to sort out the NHS. You're quick off the mark, you guys. Lots of you have been getting in touch. James says, my 5-point plan is 1, privatise, 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 privatise. And he says point 5 is, you guessed it, privatise. Get off that fence and say what you mean there, James. Annie says, it'd be very simple, Michelle. Bring back matrons in every single hospital. Point 1, remove the layers of the pen pushers, she says. Bring back state-enrolled nurses with no degrees. 4, give everybody a bill for hospital treatments, not for payment, she says, but just so that they understand the expense. And number 5, stop using private agencies, recruitment agencies, etc., who charge over the odds. That's Annie in Norwich there. I like your thinking. I want your 5-point plans. Let's see whether or not any of you guys could do a better job of running the NHS if you were in charge. The reason I'm talking about it, of course, is because it turned 75 today. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago that we were outside in our socks, banging pots and pans. Do you remember all of that? Honestly, sometimes you look back, don't you? And if anyone would beam down from outer space, they'd think, honestly, we'd lost our marbles there. But anyway, what do you make to it? Do you sit there and high-five everything and say, yes, the NHS is fabulous? Do you think it's broken? Do you think we should do something differently? And did you see what I would call the absolute weirdness, quite frankly? There was a huge ceremony today at Westminster Abbey. I mean, talk about worshipping at the altar of the NHS. I mean, look at this, everybody. That is the order of service. I've got to say, I think this is one of the problems with the NHS in the country, is that if you dare to criticise it, it's almost like you have attacked the Lord Almighty or something. Odd, if you ask me, Martin.
Yeah, so I have a 5-point plan, and your viewers made some excellent points. They're a switched-on bunch. First of all, that proves it rightly. Stop treating the NHS like a church and remove the politics from it. Now, no political party should own the NHS, yet they constantly make out it's a thing of the left. It isn't. No, your politics shouldn't be a part of it. Secondly, it needs a full financial audit. Use people from Scandinavia, from America, from Germany, where health actually works. Why are we obsessed with pouring water into a leaking bucket? Third, encourage private use via tax breaks or opt-out 2-tier health service. So what? If richer people are out of the way and allow poorer people to get a full benefit, where's the problem? Fourthly, axe all the non-jobs, the diversity jobs, the inclusivity jobs, the net zero jobs, the non-jobs. Get rid of the whole lot of them and get more nurses. And I agree with your viewer's point there. Let's end this obsession with degrees. Let's let experience count, matrons, and also British staff. Let's stop relying on immigrants to fill those posts. That's my 5-point plan.
That's his 5-point plan. We'll come back to that in a sec. Aaron, have you got a plan?
I do have a plan. I thought, by the way, Annie sounds like a very sharp lady.
Well done, Annie.
Yeah, from Norwich. Restore nurse and junior doctor pay to 2010 levels. 2, repeal the Health and Social Care Act so that the Secretary of State is responsible for performance, not some CEO or bureaucrat nobody's ever heard of, because you can get rid of the politicians if they don't do what they claim. Number 3, end the requirement on health authorities to put services out to competitive tender. Number 4, a tax on social media companies to pay for expanded mental health services. Their products, which have earned them a mint, have led to a pandemic of mental ill health amongst young people. They should be responsible in helping to deal with that. And then 5, and maybe Martin might even agree on this one, a legal ban on management consultants working for and on behalf of the NHS. Management decisions and strategic thinking should be done by people working in the NHS who have a vested interest in its long-term success.
Well, there you go, everybody. What do you think to the panel's 5-point plan? I found the response today quite interesting. For example, I think your last point there, you were saying about use British workers to staff the NHS. The flaw in the plan, though, the reason that you need overseas workers is because a lot of people don't want to enter the NHS, or they do, staff members are on about, or then they leave.
Yeah, and the old-fashioned political left, people from Aaron's persuasion, used to back the idea of better wages for working-class people. And that's gone out the window now because we're so used to cheap labour from around the world because of globalisation. We're effectively outsourcing the NHS to the cheapest competitor, which happens to be people coming from overseas. And I think we need to have a real look at that. I'd like to see working-class bursaries, so people are encouraged into the profession from working-class backgrounds, because the cost of a degree puts off working-class people getting into all sorts of professions, particularly nursing. So I think we've become too reliant on cheap labour. It's the same in Starbucks, it's the same in pubs, it's the same in the service sector, full stop. And it's certainly the case in the NHS. We should be putting British jobs first and putting money into that if necessary.
And you said you want to restore the pay of junior doctors, what was it, to 2010, did you say?
Yeah, over the long term.
Yeah.
In 1 or 2 years, but over the long term, I think.
Why 2010?
Because they have seen their real pay fall by between 20 and 35%, depends what your job is, over that time period. And we know that in 2010, there was a bunch of metrics where staff satisfaction was quite high, recruitment was pretty good, patient satisfaction was quite high. So I think it's a reasonable benchmark to work towards. And it's important to say, I mean, that's a demand right now of striking junior doctors and nurses. I think it has to be a gradual one. I think to say that we're going to increase your pay by 20% in 1 year, I don't think anybody...
Well, they're asking 35, aren't they, the BME?
That's a bargaining tool. I think they'd be very happy with 15 or 10%, frankly. But a long-term commitment to returning to broadly what we saw in 2010. And I'd add this, just sort of building on what Martin said, we have a shortfall of 100,000 healthcare staff in this country, about 50,000 nurses. Doesn't matter if you want a private system, somebody said privatise, 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 or a public system, it doesn't matter. If we're not training enough healthcare workers, it's all academic, because you need the nurses and the doctors. And so I think that's the first thing we need to really go on, and it's actually a source of sort of political agreement. Rishi Sunak outlined this plan to train more healthcare workers domestically. The problem is I don't think he's going to put his money where his mouth is.
See, I wonder at home as well whether or not you're satisfied with the service that you get from the NHS, because you see all these opinion polls, don't you? And I'm always a bit dubious when it comes to opinion polls anyway, because I've never been polled for anything in my entire life, so I always do, and I use that as my anecdote because I don't know who you're asking. But I think that actually the NHS is used as a political football in this country. I think too few politicians have got the, the chops to actually pick it up and seriously put a microscope on it and go, right, we're going to truly radically reform this thing, root and branch. I don't think anyone's got the chops for it. I don't. No,
we have a uni party on the NHS. We had a uni party on lockdowns and COVID, which is part of the problem. We became a COVID health service, and all the sort of knock-on effects we're seeing now in terms of cancer appointments are a direct consequence of the fact we had political uniformity on going down the same route. And you're right, no one's got the guts to tackle what is effectively... It's 75 years old. Michelle, I don't think the NHS is going to make it to 100 if it carries on the way it is. It's on life support. It needs a radical overhaul. And I'm afraid all we're hearing out of Steve Barclay, well, he'll be gone soon anyway, no doubt, all we're hearing from politicians is more of the same, more money, pour it into a leaking bucket. I think it takes bigger cojones than that to sort this problem out.
See, Tony Blair's popped up today, hasn't he? And he's been saying quite a few different things, actually. He's saying that it needs radical reform, it's got to embrace technology, people should be able to kind of, the way that I'm going to say it is kind of go private if that's what they're so inclined to do. What do you think to his intervention?
But they can do that already. I found that particularly strange because one of the shortcuts in the NHS is you can see a consultant privately. Might cost you a couple of £100. You might have to get an MRI or an X-ray or whatever. You get your diagnosis and you can take 6 months out of that sort of user journey in the NHS and you go straight to treatment. So you can do that already. I'm not going to make a judgment about people who do that or don't do it. So I don't quite understand his point there effectively, because as Wes Streeting said a moment ago, there is a two-tier service where those who can afford to do that. So Wes Streeting's saying we shouldn't have that. Tony Blair's saying we should have that. It's a bit of a strange one. But fundamentally, with Tony Blair's rare interventions, which seem to be almost weekly, the Blair Institute has 850 members of staff. This is a party within a party. This is an organisation which is seeking to influence policy and at the same time send people into the Labour Party as MPs. Many people now contesting Labour seats the next election were working for the Tony Blair Institute at one time or another. And my worry is, given who funds the Blair Institute, including the US State Department, why does he say the things he does? Is it because he thinks it's in the national interest, or because it curries favours with the people that donate large sums of money to his organisation?
Well, I think it's more than that.
You cynic, you, Aaron.
I think it's more than that. So we saw during COVID that Blair was the driving force behind COVID passports. And he talks today about the NHS app, about the digital ID, the embracing tech. What Blair wants is for everyone to be a walking barcode and all your medical history to be on that, including your vaccination status, a form of Chinese social credit. And he wants the Blair Institute to be able to be in charge, to be doing it, to roll it out, to get the massive contracts. Blair is an opportunist. He's a capitalist at heart. We're seeing that in its full, naked glory now.
What makes me smile, I have a wry smile, because my business background is IT transformation. So I would work with organisations and look at how they can leverage digital technology to be more effective and efficient. And when you do this kind of trade, you almost learn. It's like a textbook example of how not to do things. And it's the National Programme for IT. It's one of the biggest public sector IT technology failures of all time in this country, by the way. And it's cost you, me, us, the taxpayers, depending on which kind of calculations you use and all the rest of it, what you put in dirt, tens of billions of pounds, some people would say that costs this country to achieve the square root of absolutely nothing. And that was Tony Blair's brainchild. Now, if I'd have sat and created and kind of took the country down this path of wasted billions on a failed IT project, I probably would not see myself as the face of the next digital transformation of the NHS. I'd probably say a bit some about that bit, if I can get away with it. So I find this quite an intriguing route for him to take.
Yeah, but not surprising, because that's where the money is. Follow the money. Blair is a true globalist, and he is. He's out there. He wants everybody in the Western world to be a barcode on your phone, and that is the way he wants to go. And he wants to run that technology. He was pushing the Green Pass in Israel. He had his claws into Michael Gove, even on the advisory board of what Britain should be doing with COVID passports. Tony Blair sees this as a massive financial opportunity, not for the good of humanity, but for the good of his bank account.
When it comes to spending, a lot of you will get in touch and you'll say the Tories have not spent enough money on the NHS. I'll just bring a quick graph up to show you the spending. So just to give you some perspective here, you can see these are the years at the bottom and the billions on the left. If you take out the 2021 spend, which was 201 billion, of course, enhanced for COVID, you'll see 23-24 spend is 182 billion. 180 was 22-23. So in essence, when people say that the spending and all the rest of it has been reduced on the NHS, that's simply not true. Yep. Get your 5-point plans into me there. I will be reading some more of them out, see whether or not we can get one of you guys promoted to being the health secretary or even just a consultant to them. We'll take anything, won't we? Anyway, do you use the trains? Do you use the ticket offices? What would you do if they were all closed? Would you care or not?
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you right through till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, the former Brexit Party MEP and the journalist Martin Daubney and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Janice, who says, I'm a retired nurse. You said your previous viewer asking to bring back matrons. We've already got them. They're just now another layer of management, managed by a further layer of management. Wendy, I'm a retired RGN. I worked for 42 years in the NHS. Matrons are still there. That's what she says. Again, backing that up. You say they never went away, but the difference is they're always at meetings now instead of doing the actual graft. Patricia says, please can you stop calling it the NHS, Michelle? It should be called the International International Health Service. Anyone can come here and get treated for free. Malcolm, you're a bit harsh. You say put the NHS immediately into administration. Peter says, how about focusing on the amount of people that are entering this country, getting treatment without paying a single penny towards it. Lots of that sentiment coming through, I can tell you. Do you think the NHS does enough, by the way, to kind of prevent things, prevent illnesses? And let me ask you this as well. If you look in the mirror, honestly, I won't tell anyone your answers, if you look in the mirror, can you honestly, with a straight face, say that you do enough to take care of yourself and your health? Do you eat too much, drink too much? Do you exercise too little? I don't know. You tell yourself the answer to that, because I do worry sometimes that we are a little bit guilty of perhaps putting a bit too much strain on the NHS. You give me your thoughts. Right, are you a train user? Good luck with that. If you can manage to find trains that are not on strike these days anyway. Well, things are about to get a little bit worse, because now it's looking likely that ticket offices will come under threat of closure, apparently up to about 1,000 of them, to be precise. I'll start with you, Martin. When it comes to ticket offices, I mean, there's two kind of veins of thought here, isn't there? There's one which is, you know, get your tickets on your phone, crack on with life, you don't need this, it's an unnecessary bureaucracy. The other side of the fence is, well, that's great if you've got a smartphone and all the rest of it, but what about people that don't have that? What about people that have got the questions and the queries? You need that resource for them.
Yeah, well, the data out is, what, about 90% of people or more now aren't even using ticket officers, but the fact of the matter is the people that do rely upon them are the most vulnerable, disabled, the elderly, and oftentimes GB Newsers don't kill cash campaigners out there. It's old people that aren't keeping up with the pace of change who are made to pay the price. And I kind of agree weirdly with Mick Lynch today. It's not often you hear me saying that.
You're feeling all right, kid?
I know. I don't know what's in this coffee.
Hey, and 2 minutes ago, everyone, he was agreeing with Tony Blair. Who is this? It's Martin Daubney on the external of him, but what's going on?
Underneath, I'm one of those lizard people. I'm a David Icke one. But I think the fact of the matter is, it is true that old people particularly get left behind with parking meters. You know, with just trying to struggle with having a smartphone app. My dad wouldn't know how to have a smartphone app for a train ticket if his life depended on it. And I think it's unfair that it's being phased in like this. And they're saying that they won't make people redundant and they'll move them onto platform staff, but also safety. When you get to a train station at night, if you're lost, if you're confused, if you're an elderly person, you want human contact to help you feel safe and to help you with directions, whereas a taxi rank, it's not just about process and transactions. It's about people feeling that they're having a human interaction and they feel safe. So actually, I'm against the idea of closing these ticket offices.
So just to give you some stats here, everyone, about 12.5% of tickets apparently are sold over the counter. This is down from about 85% in 1995. In England, when it comes to railway stations, apparently 43% of them are unstaffed / no ticket office. That's according to the Rail Delivery Group. Anyway, Aaron, your thoughts on it all?
Well, I mean, besides what Martin was saying there, it just speaks to me of how we're becoming such a miserable, atomised country. You know, 15 years ago, you could go down a high street. It was very different to today. And this particularly hurts older people, like you say, because they aren't necessarily equipped to deal with the world of apps and smartphones. It's the same with post offices. It's the same with bank branches. And people over 60 really have been hit by a tsunami of just adversity in trying to do the basics in life. You said, I think it's 15% of people get a ticket, you know, face-to-face.
12.5.
Sorry, yeah, 12.5%. My apologies. You know, 1 in 8.
It's not paying attention, everyone.
No, I know. 1 in 8. But look, you know, I remember being in Hazelmere, which is a long way away from where I live, not that long ago, and I had to get a face-to-face ticket. And I don't know what the proposal is from the government in that sort of situation. What would I do? Get a taxi home? Would I spend £150 on a taxi, or get my wife to pick me up? I mean, it's daft. So it's just one of those where it's unnecessary, miserable, mean, and this idea of people on the platforms in quote-unquote new and engaging roles. You know, we have a purportedly conservative government which wants to turn the whole of the public sphere into, you know, the Apple Store. You know, I would like a bit of personality and difference and distinction when I use the trains. You go to Japan, staff all over the place, dressed very smartly, wearing their suits.
I love travelling in the train in Japan. Oh, I do.
Why
Those
can't we have
bullet
that
trains. They are. If you've never been on a train in Japan, you have not lived. And if you've not been to a toilet in Japan, that is a whole, isn't it? A whole.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever sat on a toilet in Japan?
No.
Oh, everyone, that is...
It kind of does the job for you, doesn't it?
The heated seats.
They heat you, they wash you. When you finish, they dry you.
Blow dry you.
They squirt a little poof up your bits. You can choose to have a freshener. You can choose to massage. Oh, lovely. Anyway, back to trains. I lost myself for a moment there. The flip side to all of this will be, yes, Michelle, people want these train ticket offices and all the rest of it, but people simultaneously will cry about the price of train tickets. So then, where is the happy medium here? Because the companies are trying to create efficiencies to try and keep train fares down.
They're creating efficiencies because they need to give their shareholders dividends. If you look at, for instance, the water companies, we've had privatised water in this country since 1989. More than £70 billion has been paid in dividends. They've loaded onto themselves £60 billion worth of debt, and yet water bills have increased 50% more than inflation since 1989. It's a similar tale with trains. So, look, if we had...
Are you going to take me down the nationalisation route?
No, but look, if they were making these cost savings and they said this will directly benefit the customer, I might not agree with it, but like you say, it's a trade-off and it's an explicable one. What we have instead is a system where, frankly, the consumer is squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And when you have low margins in this industry, and rail has always been a relatively low margin industry anyway, well, where are you going to get profits from? It's from poorer customer service. And I think we are coming to a place now where we do need that conversation. Should it be in public ownership or shouldn't it? I tend towards the former, but people who tend towards the latter need to understand the quality of the service will get worse and worse and worse.
It's worth pointing out that about 60% of the revenue for train companies now is from the government. It's on life support because of the government, because of the changing ways of work patterns. People are working from home and passenger numbers haven't recovered since the pandemic. They're unlikely to ever do so. And the idea that cutting staff will reduce fares is for the birds. It won't. It'll just increase profit. And actually, quite a growing proportion of conservative, traditional, patriotic voters are now warming to the idea of public ownership because privatisation has been terrible.
Well, do you know, I think I'm one of them, right, when you say about those people, because I am a capitalist. I do like the whole kind of capitalist mentality and all the rest of it. I think it's good. I think profit is good. Aspiration is good. But even me, I'm getting to the point these days where I find myself going, well, actually, it is hard for these companies to justify the dividends, the profits and all the rest of it when so many people are in dire straits and their service, quite frankly, is absolutely rubbish. I'm trying to think of a word I could use. On tea time. I did well and I'm proud of myself. My mum will be proud of me watching it. What do you make to it all? Are you one of those people that we've just been referencing that perhaps has always been down with a capitalist agenda, but even now you are starting to question whether or not that is the right one or not? What's going on with us? Are we just getting old or are times changing? And do you think if Labour were in power, things would get any better? What do you reckon to that? Anyway, world's gone mad. I always say this, don't I? Today's madness. Companies now with their staff lanyards. You don't just get one lanyard these days, ladies and gents. So no, you can have a double-sided one. So if you come into work today, I don't know, you might be feeling like Doreen. Don't you worry, flip it that way. You might be coming to work feeling like Ted, the guy. Don't worry, flip it that way. What is going on?
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, former Brexit Party MEP and journalist Martin Daubney and co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Freddie says, has Michelle opened a toilet sales business or something on the side? No, I'm not paid to promote Japanese toilets, I can assure you of that. He just, when he mentioned Japan, I don't know why, he took my brain into a very strange place. And if you know, you know, that's all I can say to you. Mark says, the Greater Manchester Tram Network operates with ticket machines or apps and that runs all right. So why suddenly is it a problem when it comes to the rail network? Please, can you ask about people over 60? My mum is 74. She goes, sorry, he's saying that you guys are saying that the older people can't use technology, but he's giving the example of his mum that absolutely can. I hear you. Richard, Paul says, you need to send Mick Lynch to Japan and he'll come back and he would soon fix the railways in this country, is it? I don't know. Lots of you getting in touch about that NHS. I want your 5-point plans. Get in touch with me because I'm fascinated by those. Again, this matron thing, it keeps coming up over and over again. I'll tell you one of the things that none of you, unless I've missed it, have mentioned so far and you've surprised me, is because one of the things I would do is bring back what they used to call cottage hospitals or convalescent homes or whatever it is, so that you can take out, I don't mean to be rude, but all the bed blockers, move them, put them into somewhere where they get the bit of care that they need and you can free up the beds for everybody else, but keep your thoughts coming in. Anyway, in today's episode of Well Gone Mad, NatWest staff at the bank, of course, they are now able to identify as men or women using the, you know, your lanyard thing, and it's double-sided. This is to allow them, the non-binary folk out there, to alternate between their different genders, whether or not they feel more masculine today or more feminine today. Some people are saying this is workplace progress. I personally think this is workplaces going mad. And some people out there might watch this and go, oh, shut up, Michelle, what are you going on about lanyards for? The reason I'm going on about lanyards, Martin, is because I feel, and I feel it so strongly, that there is something bizarre going on in this country. And I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know who was responsible for it, but it certainly feels like an orchestrated movement where they are trying to impress this gender ideology onto society and to try and force society to re-engineer itself to adopt this kind of what I would call fantasy. And the worrying bit for me is the way it's getting infiltrated into schools, and kids seem to be taught, oh, you know what, if you're a guy but you think you want to be a girl, don't worry about it, you can medically transition and all the rest of it. So for me, it's not about a harmless lanyard, it's about the direction of travel that no one seems to be blinking an eye at.
I think you've absolutely nailed it. And on the one hand, we can all roll our eyes. Here we go. The more trans madness, repeat part 25,000. The idea that you can just go to work and decide you're a woman that day is absurd. But I'm afraid we are at a point now where facts and science, for the first time in hundreds of years, are now once again being replaced by ideology, by religion, by feelings and by fantasy. And you are right. The idea that men can just go into women's spaces is misogyny. You know, something has fundamentally been lost around women's rights and protecting women and protecting children from predatory men. Not all men are predatory who transition, but some are. We must admit that. Look what happened in Scotland with the double rapist who blew apart the SNP's entire self-recognition bill around the simple truth that a man identified as a woman and went on to rape 2 women. Now, so long as that can happen, There can be no ifs or buts. And this idea that if you stand against this, you're a bigot, that you're the dangerous one, the world has lost its mind. We must protect women, we must protect children, and we must call out nonsense. Now, this is an emperor's new clothes moment, and I would urge everyone, particularly men need to get involved and stick up for women as well, because it's been too long. It's been a lonely wicket for feminists fighting against the trans movement, and it's, I think, designed to erase women.
Strong words. Aaron?
With this story in particular, I suppose I would just ask Martin, who's it hurting? So with the point about trans women in prisons, you've got a really important debate there, right? And you've got competing interests, competing demands. Well, teaching children in school about gender dysphoria or just sex in general, of course there should be a public debate about what age you would start teaching children certain things, or should certain things be taught in schools and so on. That's an entirely legitimate public debate, and people can have very different views on that, and that's just the way the world works. But on something like this, I'm not non-binary. I can't understand how a non-binary person thinks, just like I can't understand how a 60-year-old black woman thinks. You know, we're different beings. We relate to the world differently because of how society functions, in many ways, not always. And I just don't really know who this hurts. And so I think to compare this to some of the other things you mentioned, it seems... No, it seems gratuitous.
It's all part of the same spectrum.
But who's it hurting?
It's a short leap from somebody wearing a badge saying, I'm a woman today, and a customer, for example, getting it wrong and being chastised. And then we're into the realms of compelled speech. You must call me a woman today. Well, why? I refuse to go along with your fantasy. We're allowed to say that. Now, people are free to live their lives however they want. I don't care what they do in the private or in their bedrooms. The vast majority of Brits don't care either. What we do care about is being told that we have to go along with this fantasy. And if we don't, that we're the bigots.
But that's not the story. That's a plausible scenario you just identified, but they're not saying that's, you know...
Right, why is this necessary?
Well, I'm not a non-binary person. I don't know, but I just don't understand. There's lots of civil liberties issues where we do things, and we do them because nobody's being hurt, and a small group of society says, I would quite like this. So I don't... If this was hurting people, I can entirely see Martin's point.
It's a Stonewall initiative, right? Because they all want to be part of Stonewall's top 100, equality club, because that makes them look virtuous. And it's a great way of woke-washing their credentials as brutal capitalists. That's what banks do. That's what big tech does. That's what big corporations do. They want to appear virtuous, but really they're brutal capitalistic machines. And Stonewall has, we know, been insidious in schools and aiding the transition of children in private. The Tavistock Clinic has been shut down for this precise reason. Stonewall had their fingerprints all over that. Why are we backing this dangerous movement by saying, hey, let's wear a lanyard or...
How is this dangerous? I mean, I think you do need to take things on a case-by-case basis, surely.
It's a Stonewall initiative. It's part of the same movement.
So it's dangerous precisely because Stonewall have backed it, rather than you're not taking this case on its merits? Because I just don't see this as dangerous. You can see it's a bit daft or disagree or support it, but I don't see it as dangerous.
Why are public organisations such as the NHS, central government and private institutions like this, why are they pandering to this fantasy belief system of trans ideology? It's a belief system. It's not based on reality. And it is insidious because if we don't go along with it, we can get cancelled, we can lose our jobs. That's true. It does happen. Children are being taught this stuff in silence. My son comes home to me, he's 14. There are trans people in his class who never even thought about doing that until they were taught about it.
But Martin, you're talking about all these other things except for this story, which I think sort of confirms my point. This isn't really hurting anyone. I think you do need to...
See, you know what? You can pick any one aspect of this and you can look at it in isolation. So you can say, right, Michelle, what is a double-sided pronoun badge doing to hurt someone? And the answer to that, unless you're a bit dim, is you're going to go, well, in isolation, that thing, it's just a name badge, right? But this is not what this is. This is not an isolated incident of some corporate entity deciding to do a double-sided name badge with he, she, whatever it is today that they feel like. This is part of a collective movement that is literally, I would say, infesting every aspect of society, whether it's corporations, whether it's schools, workplaces, you name it. There is no need to declare your sexuality or your gender on your badge. Just have your face and have your name. That will do. But it's not enough. And the reason it's not enough is because people are absolutely desperate to get up the backsides of Stonewall to get a credit so that they can high-five themselves and feel like they are forward-thinking. And it's not. It is an ideology that's dangerous. And Nat West, by the way, if you care so much about gender, you might want to look in the mirror and ask yourself why you have got a 31.8% gender pay gap
gap between your men and your women. And on those days where women perhaps decide to get their lanyard and turn it round and pretend that they're a guy, maybe pay them like they are one as well. How about that? Right, I'll get off my soapbox, guys. After the break, Joe Biden, NATO, he reckons Ursula von der Leyen should be the boss. What do you make to them?
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, we're back. Look at that. What a treat for everybody. Aaron Bastani alongside me, as is Martin Dorman. We're just having a right set to about... We're like still stuck in that last topic, so we are. Anyway, it is good to be back. Means test the NHS to use only to those within certain salary brackets, says Matt. Thoroughly audit all of the financial affairs and trim down unnecessarily roles. Use saved funds to go towards NHS nurses on strike. And pass a bill through Parliament to allow specialist talent from overseas, including the UK, to work within the UK. That is Matt's 5-point plan. Jane, she's saying you should only be able to use the NHS if you've got a British passport. Charge everybody else. What would you do then? So if someone was in a car crash, would you stand over them, not do anything until you could check the passport? How would that work? You get in touch and you tell me. Elaine says stop using agency staff, bill people who've never paid in, buy medicines in bulk more effectively. Yes, procurement there, I think that's a good idea. This one, Elaine, you, my friend, have hit on something, and I think this is key. Take back the equipment that is given out, because actually crutches and stuff like that, they won't take them back.
That's true. Yeah.
Why?
They can't, because they say they're not sterile. There's just endless amounts of crutches in skips and in cupboards, just not being used. Complete waste of money.
Elaine, you've got a gold star, actually, on that 5-point plan, because that 1 point alone, I think that would actually save the NHS an absolute fortune. So well done you. Anyway, Joe Biden, he has been talking about who should be the next head of NATO. Ben Wallace, of course, he wanted to be it, but Nursery said Biden instead. He is backing the EU boss, Ursula von der Leyen. I'll start with you on this one, Aaron. There's a lot of hoo-ha about this. A lot of people are not happy. It says that people are saying this shows that Biden favours the EU over the UK and all the rest of it. What say you?
Well, I think Ben Wallace was never going to get the job purely because he actually served in the armed forces. That seems to be a prerequisite, is you don't have any military experience to have this job. So it was the case with Stoltenberg, who's the incumbent right now. There was a guy called Rasmussen Foe, who's Danish. He was his predecessor. And now we're going to get von der Leyen, you know, career diplomats, people with no real relation to the armed forces. And frankly, I feel like the approach to this job is, because let's be honest, it's an extension of US power, NATO, in Europe. We don't think of it like that in this country because we have nuclear weapons, similar with the French, but for most of Europe, that is what it is. It's an expression of American power to defend them from places like Russia. And the White House does not want an opinionated, strong person in this position. They want somebody who's amenable to what they say. When Joe Biden or whoever replaces him in the Oval Office says, jump, they say, how high? So ideally, you get candidates from relatively small countries like Norway or Denmark, or you get somebody like von der Leyen who just basically says, I'll do whatever you like. So I think it's predictable, it's explicable, and I think it says a great deal, actually, about the nature of what NATO is. And I know right now, obviously, Russia is in Ukraine and people have talked about the importance of NATO, but I think people need to understand we have the supreme commander of NATO in Europe has to be an American general. I don't think people realise this. They have to be an American general.
Who says that?
That's how it's been since 1949 or whatever.
So just because it's been like that, what?
Yeah, well, that's the nature of the trade. So this figure, the Secretary General, is European. So it's like a partnership. But I think really this is the political window dressing. It wasn't always like that. You know, straight after the Second World War, it was very much a partnership of equals. It's less and less like that over time. And so you were never really going to get an ex-military person who may push back against Washington in this job. It was always going to be somebody like von der Leyen.
Martin?
Ursula von der Leyen is a failed German defence minister who Germany didn't even want. I heard her maiden speech when I was an MEP in Strasbourg, and she once was so incompetent. There was a huge row about cronyism, about tank contracts she gave out while she was defence minister. She was so incompetent, the German army ran out of weapons and had to train with broomsticks.
This is exactly the point that my viewers are making.
This person is going to be in charge of the nuclear buttons. It's insanity. Also, von der Leyen made a clear play in her maiden speech, something that Nick Clegg told Brexiteers was a dangerous fantasy. She made a clear play for a European army. She also wants to fast-track Ukrainian membership of the EU, and it doesn't take a great leap of faith for Ukraine to be fast-tracked for NATO membership. What would that say to Russia? Biden is hiring a puppet to do his dirty work, to expand NATO, an incompetent bureaucrat who was voted in on a ticket of one. Nobody even was allowed to stand against her when she was elected as European Commission President. I voted against her because I saw through her claptrap on day one. This person in charge of the nuclear buttons is terrifying.
Well, that, I can tell you now, so many of my viewers are writing in about the broom handles. I've seen your email, I hear you, and absolutely echoing your sentiment there that she failed when she did have that job. Mike has been in touch about his 5-point plan. He's saying, get people to pay for their meals when they're in the hospital. You have to pay at home. Yeah, but when you're at home, you can go to work and earn the money to pay for your meals. If you're laid up in a hospital bed, you're not going to be able to do that. But I do agree with your point there, Mike, when you say, charge the drunks. When you go out scrapping on a Friday night or you drink so much you can't even stand up and you get picked up by an ambulance, stick them in a Cerber.
Hello there, very good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Many of us did see some sunny intervals throughout today, and whilst there is an area of low pressure waiting in the wings out in the Atlantic, slowly moving towards the UK, for many of us throughout this evening and overnight, we are still in this interim, slightly quieter period, and so many of the showers that were around during the day will slowly fade their way out, and a lot of us should see some clear intervals during the overnight period. Some mist and fog patches are possible, but they'll readily clear once we reach dawn on Thursday morning. Temperatures generally holding up around 11-12 degrees Celsius, but we could just drop into single figures in some rural areas and perhaps a bit more widely across parts of eastern Scotland. But for many of us, seeing a fair amount of brightness first thing on Thursday morning, and for much of Scotland, England and Wales it will be a relatively similar day. Sunny spells with a scattering of showers. A very different theme to the weather for Northern Ireland though, this band of rain moving its way in, turning things quite damp and windy. Temperatures are going to be holding back underneath that persistent cloud for Northern Ireland, but where we see the sunshine elsewhere could climb towards 22-23 Celsius. This rain in the west then is going to push its way into the west of Scotland, and that could provide again some heavy outbreaks during the overnight period. Staying much drier further towards the south and east with some clear intervals, allowing for a good amount of sunshine first thing on Friday morning as we get up, and underneath that sunshine temperatures will be responding, climbing to the high 20s in places. Definitely a different feel further towards the north and west, much cloudier, further outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, perhaps a few spells of showers in northwest England as well. We get this second area of low pressure gradually moving its way towards the UK for Saturday, and that cold front could provide a thundery outbreak for many of us as we move into the first half of the weekend. And temperatures will also be building through Saturday, perhaps reaching 30 degrees Celsius, but something fresher.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media